We were talking about it on the World Edition earlier today and all along those lines, but there was definitely a lot of politicians that are paying attention to this whole Menendez case and all along those lines. So, Senator Cory Booker and more than a dozen other Democratic senators are calling to Menendez to quit due to the bribery indictment. So, U.S. Senator Cory Booker has joined a fast growing chorus of Democrats calling on Senator Bob Menendez, his fellow lawmaker from New Jersey, to resign after those indictments last week on federal bribery charges. And Booker said in a statement on his X account, I believe stepping down is best for those Senator Menendez has spent his life serving. And by midday on today, at least 18 Democratic senators have asked that Menendez step down in light of the allegations that he and his wife Nadine accepted hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash, gold bars, a Mercedes Benz vehicle, and more from three New Jersey businessmen in exchange for favors. I wonder what those favors were and all along those lines. And I'm sure that that will be coming out and more. But like I said, there's a growing chorus of folks that are trying to get him to retire and all along those spaces or resign, I should say. Like I said, Senator Booker's in that list. Michael Bennet, Democrat from Colorado's on that list. Amy Klobuchar, who is a former presidential candidate, Democrat from Minnesota, is on that list. Sherrod Brown, Democrat from Ohio. Peter Welch, Democrat from Vermont, and a whole bunch of others that are in that kind of power structure, particularly out of the Democratic Party as well. Matter of fact, Representative Nancy Pelosi, the California Democrat who previously served as House Speaker, told MSNBC in an interview on last night that it probably would be a good idea if he did resign. So, yeah, there's a lot of pressure for him to resign, and these are some top leaders and all along those lines, including the majority leader, Chuck Schumer of New York. Well, actually, he hasn't called on him to resign as of yet, but who knows? He may do that later, but he's not done it as of yet. And Menendez does have some major jobs, and one of those he's already stepped aside from because he stepped aside as chair of the Senate Farm Relations Committee, but remains a member of that panel as well as a member of the Banking and Finance Committee. Wait a minute, weren't you just convicted of bribery and you're part of a Banking and Finance Committee? I don't know about what Sasha says about that, but I'm going like, how can you be a member of something that you are involved in that kind of lane? Because I'm going like bribery and banking committee. That doesn't sound like a good match, but that's just my thoughts. I don't know what you think about that, but I'm going like, I don't know that I want somebody like that on the whole committee and all along those lines because you've already been accused of things in that way. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. And I know there's been a lot of talk even about your favorite issue, Sasha, because apparently some of these politicians are trying to pull back on Ukraine. I heard that Marjorie Greene was trying to pull back. I think that one of the other major politicians was trying to pull back. So they just can't seem to get their house in order, can they?
In my opinion, the pullback with Ukraine is based on the fact that Biden played for a while a crucial role in supporting Ukraine. So um, it's almost like anti-Biden activity rather than support or not support the Ukraine, because majority, the huge majority of Republicans are in favor of supporting Ukraine because this is vital for U.S. interests, where a country much smaller than Russia and supposedly much weaker than Russia single-handedly is taking on the biggest enemy United States and the West ever had in all the history. And U.S. is not has not lost even a single life in this conflict. And whatever the machinery they supply, finances, the machinery can be built more and more and more as needed. And finances, you can print money as much as you want because you're the only one country in the world that has ability to print US dollars. So remember when Warren Buffett was asked if US can go ever bankrupt, he says absolutely not. How can the country, which is the only one in the world, can print US dollars, which is in demand all over the world, can go bankrupt? It's just physically impossible. Now, regarding Menendez, I look, he obviously he looks like a crook. let's even not go into details. If you look at his face, and if you've been around long enough, you know that face belongs to the crook. So he is a crook, obviously. Now, the thing is, what I would like to educate myself, and I'm not certain. Do you have to wait until proven guilty by the court, or you can be asked to resign, actively do anything? No, then there should be quite obvious repercussions. I don't know uh, what's the right take on this. Nick, you have some idea?
Let's see. Host says immediately. Great. Okay. Well, the thing is, for political purposes, you can declare him guilty. For legal purposes, he's not guilty until a court or a jury
Agree.
declares him guilty. Okay. But let's look at all the badges of fraud, as you would say. Okay. The warrant, 500,000 in cash. Okay.
Mhm.
Who carries 500,000 in cash? And he says, well, I'm just trying to escape Cuba, so I'm used to carrying cash because I'm worried about what? The American economic system? Aren't you a U.S. senator? So what are you doing 500,000 cash? Gold bars. Come on, Sasha. Who carries around gold bars? More badges of fraud that exist. And so what happens is when you look at Menendez, he's got like every possible badge of fraud written all over him. And you know, he's not guilty
Hey, Nick, speaking of
until he's
bad
declared guilty.
frog and all of this, and I know Sasha will love this news because we have some major news that just came down on the front and everything. We got some very major news. A judge ruled today, the day being Tuesday, that Donald Trump committed fraud. I know that this comes as a shock to Sasha for years while building the real estate empire that catapulted him to fame and the White House. So Judge Arthur Engoron ruled in a civil lawsuit brought by the New York Attorney General that the former president and his company deceived banks, insurers, and others by massively overvaluing his assets and exaggerating his net worth on paperwork used in making deals and securing financing.
Doesn't matter. He's the best. Election was stolen.
It doesn't matter.
Let's make America great again. Come
It
on.
doesn't matter. I mean, the thing is, he's what they call Teflon Don. So the Teflon Don, it doesn't matter what the courts say. It's what the court of public opinion says, which is totally different. And that's one reason he's going to win the election. Because
But can he win the election if he convicted of fraud? Y'all talking about
it doesn't
Menendez,
matter.
and then apparently this judge ordered that some of his businesses license has to be rescinded, making it impossible for him to do business in New York, and said he would have to continue to have an independent monitor to oversee the Trump organization's operations. So looks like his business might not be doing all that well.
But it doesn't matter because the thing is, Trump knows the legal game, so he's going to do the one word that gets him out of all this trouble. You know what gets him out of all this trouble, Mark? One word.
What's that?
The appeal. Okay, so all he has to do is post an appeal, and the case is stayed until a higher court hears it. So Donald Trump knows the game. He'll file an appeal. Everything that you heard would be stayed until a higher court hears the case. So it's like I said, it's a waste
Nick,
of time.
I read today a very interesting story in Atlantic. Is that some states already started proceedings that, according to the Article 14 of the Constitution, is not eligible even to run for the election, and they're asking very speedy Supreme Court decision on that issue.
I mean, again, as they say, in chess, you've hung out with grandmasters. Not so easy, okay, because what you're doing, and I've heard the 14th Amendment people, the 14th Amendment are like as crazy as the January 6th people are. The 14th Amendment has Donald Trump been proven guilty of treason as we sit today, has he, Sasha?
It's not clear whether he has been found guilty or just a mere fact that he was fighting Constitution on January 6th is enough.
Doesn't matter. That's all. Has a court of competent jurisdiction. Right?
I didn't find it in Article 14.
Okay, but it doesn't.
It's not
matter.
there.
Okay, so the thing is, they're shooting in the wind. They have a big problem ahead of them. In other words, they're going like, well, he's guilty of insurrection, treason, blah 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 blah. Okay,
Well, speaking of shooting in the wind, we know we got a big debate coming up on Wednesday about the Republicans, but and Biden, I mean Trump is passing up on this debate because he's going to go talk to union workers. And apparently Biden went and talked to the union workers, and he grabbed the bullhorn by the picket line today and urged the striking auto workers to stick with it in an unparalleled show of support for organized labor by a modern president. So is this play for the labor vote going to help him and everything? Because you know that's a play for the labor vote, because he even donned a union ball cap, did the fist bump, and definitely told the United Auto Workers strikers that you deserve the significant raise that you need, as he stopped in the Detroit area just days ahead of a planned visit by Trump. So I'm sure Trump will be telling folks that he's the one for the labor votes.
It's a complete political play by Joe Biden. I mean, a lot of stuff he does, that's the reason somebody wrote a book, The Last Politician, is complete political play. Okay, and you'll get labor votes. But you know what? It's like saying Trump is playing to the conservative vote. So what? Trump gets the conservative vote anyway. Biden's going to get the labor vote anyway. So what all he's doing, Biden is trying to do, is solidify it. And then he's bribing the rest of the young people by saying, I'm going to eliminate your student loans. So Biden is playing politics.
No longer is
you
it
know what's happening. He's losing the independent vote. And here's why Biden's going to lose. Two reasons. Number one, it's more expensive in the United States of America to buy a house than it ever was in the last 22 plus years. Number two, it's more expensive to buy a car than it has been in 22 years. What do most young people buy, or even other people buy? Houses and cars. And Biden
just told you, Menendez apparently got a Mercedes Benz.
Well, Biden has made it unbelievably to impossibly expensive, and he's going to take the heat on that. And once just like when I looked at Trump, I said he's going to lose because of COVID.
How Trump, Nick, how Trump will make cars and houses less expensive?
Because here's how he does it. He said, here's how he does it, Sasha. It's magic dust. He says he's going to make it less expensive. See, he doesn't have to do anything because he's not sitting in office. All he has to do is say, if you elect me, houses are going to be less expensive. Cars are going to be less expensive. Economy is going to be great. Look what I did when I was president. Your houses were less expensive. Your cars are less expensive, and the economy is great. And everybody's going to go, remember, these are low information voters. They don't watch our show. They go, oh, yes, Trump's going to make my life better. And they'll vote for him. He wins, Biden loses. The Democrats will cry, oh, I can't believe we lost. And I'm sitting there and going like, dude, you have an octogenarian. You're trying to get up there that has no energy. You are going to lose. And that's what's going to happen. And
speaking of losing, and I wanted to get to
the only way you're going to
something.
change history is you've got to replace Biden with a suitable candidate.
You got to get a younger candidate. Probably don't know that that's
Oh,
going to
by the way, you know
happen.
what else is going to happen? Two more things. Prediction. Number one, when Biden leaves office, he's going to forgive Hunter Biden. He'll pardon him. So that case is over. Hunter won't spend a day in jail. Number two, when Trump gets in office, he's going to pardon all his cronies. And they're all going to be released from prison.
That could be the case.
only in
Yeah, I did
America.
see that they have a quicker system of resigning in Canada, because the Speaker of Canada's Parliament resigned today after apparently he invited a Ukrainian Nazi veteran to attend a special session of Parliament and called that man a hero amid two standing ovations. But it looked like he stepped down today after meeting with the party leader. So in that case, they actually listened to the party leader there in Canada. So there was some growing cross-party calls for his resignation. So it wasn't just one party that was asking for him to resign. It looks like it was a cross-party line. And I guess he got the message, because definitely even earlier in the day, y'all's foreign minister, Melanie Joly, called the situation deeply unacceptable and an embarrassment. So the government leader said that Rodi should do the honorable thing and step down. And the conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, criticized Justin Trudeau for the fiasco, saying the prime minister had brought shame on Canada after the government's failure to have its massive diplomatic and intelligence apparatus vet and prevent honoring a Nazi. So, but what all of this is coming to a quick head. We're still dealing with Melendez, but apparently, this incident took place over several days, and he's already out of office. So maybe there's a quicker system of getting folks out in Canada. I've yet to visit Canada, Sasha. I need to get there, but maybe there's a quicker system of getting folks out of office there in your fine country of Canada.
What's interesting is that a lot of people, a lot of Canadians are very unhappy with Speaker resigning, and they're blaming it all on Trudeau. And they all believe that Trudeau must resign, not the Speaker, that nobody even knows the name of that faithful Speaker. But Trudeau, has to take all responsibility. But anyway, that's it's awful mistake by whoever made it. But what can you do about it now?
Yeah, they say the gentleman's name is Anthony Rota, Rota. So that's the gentleman that stepped down and all along those lines. So yeah, I'm sure that apparently he was the party leader, well, one of the party leaders over there in Ottawa. Definitely, he's the person that is stepped down, and I guess he made his realms and got up to leadership there in Canada. Like you said, a lot of folks know Trudeau, don't necessarily like Trudeau from what I'm hearing, but they probably, if you ask them that person, we got the same issue here. Nick, how many people can actually tell you their current senator?
I don't know. That's an absolutely good question. We have this problem in the United States, is that who determines who the president of the United States is going to be? And I have the answer to that. We're going to show you in just a minute.
Okay.
This is the group that will determine the president of the United States, the head of the free world, the most powerful person on earth. Low information voters. Okay. So the thing is, the sad part, Mark, is the people that determine who gets elected are low information voters. And you may be right. This is where it drives Adam crazy, because they may not be able to name who their senators are. They may not even be able to name what the three branches of government are, but they heard there's a guy that'll make America great again. They heard there's this guy who'll make their houses and their their houses and their cars cheap. They heard that they'll secure the borders and keep you safe from all those invaders that are coming through Mexico. So because they heard this person, they're going to vote for this person as opposed to the other guy that houses are too expensive, cars are too expensive, the economy is being trashed and ruined, and that makes the determination of who is the
well, in this country, your favorite people,
democracy, get over it. Yeah, Mark.
Your favorite people, the Supreme Court, are back in the news on this one as well, because earlier today they defeated a bunch of Alabama Republicans for the second time in 3 months, because there was an attempt apparently to have a congressional map that was only going to have one majority black district. So they didn't like that. So they said, y'all got to go back. So the court, in two related applications, used emergency requests from Republican state officials to block lower court rulings that invalidated the new map, and lower court proceedings to approve a new map are still ongoing. So it definitely looks like there are some pushback towards some of the things that were going on. I know that some people have been concerned about the Voting Rights Act and whether it will stand up, and all along those lines. And actually, some of the Deep South states, there are some serious concerns that get around rules about how IDs are done, and all along those lines. So there's a lot of questions that your Supreme Court is going to be dealing with as well. Apparently, there were no noted dissenting votes, and the court did not explain its reasoning. So I guess the court doesn't always have to explain why it does what it does. But Abba Khanna, a lawyer who challenged the map, said Alabama's open defiance of the Voting Rights Act stops today. And she expressed hope that the decision might prompt Alabama to rethink their dogged resistance to providing equal political opportunities to Black Alabamians. So definitely, but it looks like their Republicans were doubling down on the state's approach, saying in a statement Tuesday that both maps that the state had drawn should have been upheld. So I'm thinking that they're going to try to appeal.
Oh, Adam has arrived. And by the way, I've been defending your thesis that low information voters should not be allowed to vote because they just don't have the bandwidth to vote for anything, really. But at the same time, the thesis that we brought on our show that Trump will beat Biden, and we ran polls on the Pod TV LinkedIn polls. The Pod TV LinkedIn polls all show Trump smashing Biden. And we went over that last week. But here's the thing. Since then, the Washington Post did a poll, and guess what? They showed the same thing. Trump beating Biden by 10 points. So the Pod TV poll, even though it's inaccurate, I must admit, and we put it on LinkedIn, it gave us an indication of what the what's going to happen in the election. But I want to give your thoughts, Adam, especially to the national election, of course, and the Menendez issue. Oh, you're muted, Adam. Can't hear you.
Yeah, I don't hear you, Adam.
Computer issues.
Still don't hear.
No information voters.
Yeah, I'm having issues with it. Might have to go out and come back in. I don't know if that's the case. I don't hear you at all. Adam is being silenced by both the Republicans and the Democrats.
I didn't think it was possible to silence Adam.
I said he's being silenced by both the Republicans and the Democrats. And you know, he's also coming. I've got to check the votes, but I think he was coming in either third or fourth in our latest poll to Taylor Swift. So Taylor Swift was winning that poll, and Donald Trump was coming in second. So Adam was not doing well against his friend Taylor.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Yes.
Okay, I apologize for that, and I apologize for being late. I was listening to the Russian national anthem, unfortunately, and watching an interview with Mr. Putin. No, in all honesty, my car broke down on the way home. Well, I think that it's great news for the United States today that we can look forward to Trump in 2024. I'm looking forward to securing that border. I'm looking forward to a better economy. I'm looking forward to welcoming corporations back into the country with a lower corporate tax rate. I'm looking forward to lower taxes for individuals. And I'm looking forward to lower gas prices. And
Adam, just really quickly, are you looking forward to Trump pardoning himself? Because apparently he was indicted today for committing fraud in New York.
Oh, yes. I look forward to that day, too. Trump should pardon himself because those indictments are so politically motivated and so lacking a basis in law or fact, particularly the ones in New York, in Georgia, and in Washington, D.C., where Trump was expressing his First Amendment rights, which is an important right for every American. But
Adam, who makes the determination that it's politically motivated indictments or not? Who is determining that?
That's a great question. And there's really no way to determine it for certain. But you can infer that it's politically motivated when the people who are bringing these indictments are Democrats, when they're bringing them in jurisdictions that are heavily Democratic, and when they're bringing them based on facts that are very, very questionable. It seems to me that once they saw that Trump was going to be the Republican nominee, they did everything possible to ensure that he wouldn't be through these indictments. And it's not going to work. What it's going to do is create a backlash and further solidify his support. Now, when it comes to voting, I am not a fan of the right to vote. I do not believe that most people should have the right to vote because they're not educated enough and don't have sufficient knowledge to make an informed decision on political issues. And second, some people are just bad people. You have a lot of racists out there, a lot of sexist, homophobic jerks out there. Why should they be allowed to vote? You want to join the KKK? You shouldn't be allowed in a voting booth. I think a better democracy is one that ensures that the citizens who are voting have at least some level of knowledge and moral character.
Adam, in ancient Greece, I think not everyone who physically lived there was allowed to vote. There was a certain sense. For example, the slaves were not allowed to vote, only free people. And free people in Greece, they had certain understanding of democracy, of the laws. It's not for everyone. It's in the United States, situation is several times worse than in ancient Greece because just too many idiots in the United States, and they are deciding who would be elected the most important position in the whole world. Incredible.
Well, on that we agree because you have in this country You have the high school jock who's smoking marijuana and obsessed with the captain of the cheerleading team who doesn't know how to count to 10. You have the racist member of the KKK. You have the sexist jerks who can often be found as CEOs or in law firms. You have transphobic jerks. You have a lot of immoral people. They shouldn't be allowed to vote. And then you have what I call the morons, the people who don't know or don't care to know about anything. One time when I was at a polling place, before I went into the voting booth, there was a gentleman ahead of me who looked back at his girlfriend and said, "Honey, who was I supposed to vote for?" They shouldn't be allowed to vote. We need people who have knowledge and moral character. And that is only about maybe 40 to 50% of Americans. The right to vote? No. The right to vote in an informed way? Yes.
So how are you going to determine that? You know, like I said before, there was the whole notion of the poll taxes, and there were people that tried to create kinds of ways to regulate it, and they had some crazy stuff, including whether you could count beans and a number of other things that didn't make a lot of sense in the ways that they did them, and all in that kind of way. So how would you make sure that we don't fall into the trap of the poll taxes that were definitely used to repress a lot of votes historically?
Sure. Well, those racist policies should be condemned, and certainly any reasonable person would. Well, before I got my driver's license, I had to take a driving test. I had to actually drive a car, and I had to answer basic questions about the rules of the road. The same should be true for individuals who want to vote. Like I said, the high school jock, the racist, the sexist, or the general moron who spends more time, eating 5,000 calories a day than reading 5,000 words a day should not be allowed to vote, because then you're not going to get informed voters. And when you don't have informed voters, you get bad leaders. I'm against that. And if we want to make America great again, it begins by making the people who vote great again.
I like that one.
That sounds like good. But what would your thoughts be, Adam, since you are running for president? We know this in 2028 and everything, because here in North Carolina, they made a rule, and Nick can correct me if I'm wrong, that North Carolina felons that were out of prison and on probation lost their right to vote and everything. So would you keep those kind of rules around the nation, or would they be allowed to vote? Because there are some very educated people in prison, because a lot of people wind up going to the college system of the prisons, because if you know the story.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm someone who believes in second chances, and I don't believe that someone who has committed a crime and served their time should be denied the right to vote. And what they should be required to do, though, is show a basic knowledge of our legislative, judicial, and executive process, and have the moral character, e.g., not being racist, sexist, member of the KKK. Then I would allow them to vote, and I would give people second chances. And when I go to North Carolina, I'm going to go to Duke University. I'm going to go to North Carolina. I'm going to go to North Carolina State. I'm going to send this message and bring it to the people. And North Carolina is going to be in my column in 2028.
We have no doubt about that. You've got all kinds of folks that will probably be helping your campaign and all along those lines.
I'll even go to Charlotte.
You'll even go to Charlotte?
Yes.
That's good. That's really good of you. Are you going to go to Asheville as well? Because Asheville is one of the few states around the country so far. I know California. A lot of people think that California has fallen off the deep end, but Asheville did award reparations. So would you be going to Asheville? Because Asheville was a reparations state.
Asheville is a beautiful, beautiful area. Yes, I will. And I'm going to go to North Carolina State. I'm going to talk to the Wolf Pack, and I'm going to say, you know what? It's time to vote for somebody who's moderate, who's sensible, and who's going to make America the kind of America that we've always dreamed of, and that has eluded us for far too many years.
That's the other question I was going to ask. This is for everybody on the panel. There is this notion that Trump had of make America great. And then the question that people have asked me is, exactly when was America great? Because we go back, there were some times that America was not all that great, like around the Great Depression, around slavery, around a number of other things. So exactly where are we trying to take America back to? Because that's the question that some people have asked me, because some of the things that we have won, we want to keep the victories, I would think. But I don't know. Adam, what's your thoughts?
It was a time before Englishmen colonized.
We were great when we were Native American Indians.
The 1960s, when we had JFK and Camelot. The 1980s, with Ronald Reagan and the mid 1990s with Bill Clinton. I don't care what he did in the Oval Office. I care what he did for the American people. And as far as that goes, the best president in the last 50 years, best presidents were Bill Clinton and Richard Nixon. I don't care about what Bill Clinton did in the Oval Office, and I don't care about that third-rate burglary they call Watergate. I care about the fact that these men did great things for the people. At the end of the day, a president should serve the people and make sure their lives are better than they were 4 years ago. And that's what's going to happen.
What about JFK, Adam? JFK?
Yeah.
Would you put him on same level?
I thought JFK would have been one of the best presidents ever.
I agree on that one. I think if he'd been given the chance, we have another Kennedy running. Do you think that he would carry the same credibility in that world?
No, I don't think he would, because I think that he's not doesn't have support in the Democratic Party, and he doesn't have the kind of ideas that JFK had and the kind of inspiration that JFK really provided to people. JFK was a man of great charisma, great ideas, and he kind of brought the innocence back to America that people yearn for. Ronald Reagan did that to an extent, and I thought Bill Clinton did too. What we need is a leader who is going to actually lead for the people and do things that are going to help the American people. The average person who wakes up at 8 o'clock in the morning and works and lives paycheck to paycheck. We need to help the people in the Midwest, the people who are struggling, and we need a leader who's going to inspire them and who they know is going to help them, and not a leader who's a narcissist like Trump is, not a leader who's in cognitive decline like Biden is. We need a new generation of leaders, and that starts with people like me.
Yes, it does.
Sounds like it.
I think that we need a younger crowd of people in our leadership roles in order to bring us not only out of the hole that we're in, but also for just generating new ideas, generating new policies, generating a new world, because we are entering a new world. We need people that are a lot more tech savvy. People, like you were saying, that you'll come visit NC State University. I mean, that's one of the flagship engineering schools in the world. One of them, not the only one. There are others, but
Georgia's got one, Georgia Tech. There's a number of other ones that are significant.
Well, there's plenty of tech schools, but NC State is up there with always being, in the front realm of technology, and of course NC State has the quantum computer. So, there are others that are just now getting that, but they were the first to have it. But I think that a younger leadership like you would really benefit our country far greater than anyone who's running right now. It's just
hey, Adam, real quick question. Do you think that everybody that is passing these large bills should be required to read them, understand them, and know what they have passed? Because I just saw that recently we had a new bill in North Carolina that was passed. Apparently, everybody's concerned about climate change, so they've got a rule of plastic bags of all things. So Asheville is debating a plastic bag ban, and Durham a 10-cent fee, and then the state stepped in. So there's two cities, and I just named the two cities, were debating it. They stepped in and passed a law that prevents them from doing so. So the law says that Asheville can't have the plastic bag ban and Durham can't have its 10-cent fee and all in that space. But the provisions take place in the newly passed 625-page state budget. That's bigger than some textbooks and a lot of textbooks and everything. So should they have to not only put items into it, but also understand it?
Oh, they should ideally, but they don't. They often don't read the bills they're passing. And instead of plastic bags, or plastic surgery for that matter, what I'm going to do for the state of North Carolina is this. I am going to say that every single person who is below the poverty line gets $50,000 tax-free. And in areas where there is high crime, I'm going to pay people $1,000 and contract with them not to commit crime. And that is going to make a difference because those are solutions. And they can have as many plastic bags or plastic surgeries as they want. Reminds me of Joan Rivers, way too many plastic surgeries. But anyway, I don't want to go down that road. But I'm going to have solutions that, you want to talk about elevating people out of poverty. The way to do it is to give them money. Is to have and give them free tuition to NC State, but not to North Carolina, because North Carolina, I'll reluctantly visit. But what?
Adam, since you're legislating stuff and all along those lines, are you going to legislate age rules as well? Because we just had a very popular wrestler, Hulk Hogan, who decided he wanted to marry somebody much younger than himself and everything. So, are you going to legislate a rule that says that the 70-year-old can't marry the 45-year-old? I think she's a blonde, but I'm not sure. I don't see a picture of her right now.
No, because I'm a feminist, and I believe that women should have the right to make choices that empower them. And this woman obviously made a smart choice by marrying Hulk Hogan, a very powerful man, a wealthy man, a man of great character. I applaud her. Their wedding pictures, I saw them online. They were beautiful.
Cool. So we're not going to legislate that. By the way, Adam, you'll be glad to know I've got to check on it because I think you're an independent. I may have your vice president if you can have a male vice president if you're not committed to Taylor Swift. But a dear friend of mine, Morgan Freed, that is a real estate photographer. His son, Martin is the father. His son, Morgan, is very much involved in politics, was actually on the student council at Appalachian State or East Carolina, one of those colleges, and definitely is still involved in politics. But ironically, because a lot of folks know that I am more on the Democratic side, he is very much a Republican. But yeah, we're still good friends and everything. So I'll see if Morgan's available to be your vice president.
I will say this though, Taylor Swift is really pretty,
right?
So I think that I would have to choose her as the VP of that on that basis alone. But without sounding shallow, I would be open to anybody as a vice president who would challenge my ideas and bring a diversity of thought to the campaign, because I'm not right on everything. I'm humble enough to know that I'm wrong on a lot of things. And I want someone who's going to bring original perspectives, but with the goal of making sure that we're helping people.
Well, there's nothing wrong. It doesn't have to be always opposing, but there's nothing wrong with having that diverse understanding between each other. I mean, that to me always made a perfect relationship in marriage is that neither one of us was always right, but we each brought in expertise in our opinions, and we never agreed on anything, but eventually we found things and made it work. So I think you're right, Adam. I think that a vice president used to be a president and vice president never ran on the same ticket, many years ago. Mm-hmm. I don't know why they changed that, except that, but I think a vice president does nothing but kiss up now.
Well, speaking of vice presidents and all on those lines, who do we think, well, one, does anybody care? Is anybody going to be watching tomorrow? And is this a debate to pick the vice president? Is that really what's going on in this vice presidential debate? A lot of people say that Vivek won, and they say that Nikki did really well, Nikki Haley, and a number of others that they were impressed with. Some of the others they were not impressed with, and I think 2 of them dropped out. So I think we might only have 6 that are at this current debate, the one that will be taking place at the Ronald Reagan Library there in California and everything. So what is our thoughts about the debate, and does it have any benefit whatsoever?
Mark, I think you're taking it too far. I think except what's his name, Vivek Kamasutra or something, nobody would agree to be Trump's vice president nominee. No one. He's the only one who would.
You think Nikki would take the job?
No, she's not. She's not. She look at what she said and wrote about Trump. How could she be his vice president? It's impossible.
I'm going to say something controversial.
Go for it.
The reason that Nikki Haley is where she is because she's smart. But let me tell you something. Looks go a long way. Looks go a very long way. I have not seen that much substance out of her. But because most people would consider her good looking, it shows you the bias that people have towards individuals who are good looking. That's not taking anything away from Nikki Haley. I'm sure she's brilliant and has wonderful ideas. But it's a little bit of a shame that our presidential politics sometimes comes down to how people look rather than what they say. And when I'm president, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. I'm going to stand in the Rose Garden with Vladimir Putin, and I can't pronounce his name. The Ukraine and Russia, they're going to achieve peace. And we're going to stand there with the Ukrainian flag, the Russian flag, and we're going to say, you know what?
You're going to sit there with Zelensky and Putin and not try to get them into, like, because there's probably going to be like some arm wrestling matches.
Zelensky and Putin are going to shake hands the same way that Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat shook hands in 1996. We're going to create peace, an independent Ukraine, and a stable Russia, and we're going to make the world a better place.
I agree with that mentality as well. Why does everything have to be war? And responded with war. I mean, you know, what Putin did was wrong, but maybe the better way to approach this instead of threatening is to say, hey, you know what, let's just shake hands. Let's play a chess game. You know, let's figure this out. And, you know, let's talk about how we can make both countries powerful and independent on their own. I like the idea of a peace, you know, an olive branch being handed to everyone and just say, let's sit down and talk about it. Do you think Putin will agree to this?
Sasha,
I'd
love to hear Sasha.
I'm curious, would he agree?
Yeah, Sasha, do you think that there could ever be a person that could literally do that kind of negotiation that would actually get the two of them in the same room and that they would be a feasible result and everything? Because I mean, there have been people that have tried. I remember even Dennis Rodman went to different places and tried to negotiate deals and everything. And definitely,
great job he did.
Definitely, Henry Kissinger has as well. So, do you think that somebody could literally get Zelensky and Putin in the same room and that they would come to a agreement of some sort or another, or just a no-win situation for those kind of negotiations?
Do you realize from the history of the world, history of the wars, that there are some wars that cannot be resolved without one side decisively they will take over on the battlefield the other side. If you remember First, Second World War, many other wars done history, like 30 years war, so maybe others, right? I'm not going to go into it, but you already understand what's happened is the Russia on the February 24th, 2022 has invaded Ukraine, independent country. Should I continue or stop right there? So to end the war, after hundreds of thousands of people being killed, I'm not counting the maimed and all the other atrocities, Russia, not Ukraine, Russia lost 275,000 people. Now, how to resolve that? Do you know that shortly after Russia attacked Ukraine, there were peaceful proposal headed by Turkey, by a few other countries that are considered to be a power brokers in that region. And it could have been done. But what's happened in the first few weeks of war, Russia committed incredible atrocities in Bucha and few other little places around Kiev, where they raped women, little girls, killed innocent people by shooting them right in their head with the hands tied behind their backs. All that has been discovered, and all peace proposals went down the drain. It is impossible to make a peace, especially if Putin at least would have any decency to take all his army out of Ukraine. Okay, we're all out. Now, where are you going to resolve that? What would you like to see? What we would like to see? Can we meet each other halfway or third way or whatever? Putin is not doing that. He insists that it's his right to have a piece of Ukraine. It's approximately 20% of all Ukraine. That's his right to have. Based on what? I don't know, maybe You know that better than anybody else here.
Well, here's the thing. I think that the reason that Russia invaded Ukraine is largely attributable to NATO expansion. When you look at Western Europe and how many countries joined NATO, and Ukraine was going in that direction, it was a threat to their security. And what I would do is I would prohibit Ukraine from becoming a part of NATO, and I would recognize them as an independent country. And I think that I could negotiate with Putin. I really do.
Here's the essence of.
And I like, Putin is go on.
Since 1991.
And I would give reparations to Iraq for our terrible invasion that killed Saddam Hussein. But that's another issue.
That's fine. I have no sense in that. But since 1991, both Russia and Ukraine became independent countries.
Right.
So why do you think one independent country can dictate to another one what to do, whom to join, and so on? How do you see that can happen?
Well, because I see it as a threat to Russia's national security.
Why would you care about Russian national security? Why? As an American, why would you care about Russian national security? Who gives?
I'm looking at the situation from Russia's perspective. Every country's leader, every country is going to care about their national security. And when you see Western Europe, one by one, becoming a part of NATO, and then you have Ukraine going that direction, you have on their border countries, pro-democracy countries that are hostile to Russia, and that is a threat to their security. I suspect if we were Russians, we would feel the same way. It's kind of like if I lived in North Carolina and, all of a sudden on the East Coast, we had the Chinese, sitting there with troops. It would ultimately threaten our security. They have to stop the NATO expansion.
Wait a sec. Talking about NATO, do you have any
silly organization? I'm sorry?
Do you have any ideas how new countries are being accepted to NATO? What is the process exactly? Do you have any idea?
I don't have idea about the specifics of the process, but I
I'll
know.
Tell you. What? What is it? You know.
What is? Well, the outcome is more important than the process. Russia is surrounded by countries that are part of NATO, and Ukraine is the last one right on its border that now wants to be part of NATO, and that's the red line.
What about Finland and Sweden, especially Finland, who already joined NATO and who has 1,000 kilometers of common border with Russia? What do you think about that? So why Russia is not fighting Finland already over it?
Because it's the cumulative effect of the expansion. If you look at the map, Russia is now surrounded by NATO countries, and Ukraine is the only one who's not in NATO. That's the last domino to fall. And so Russia, from Putin's perspective, is saying, enough is enough. We cannot have yet another country on our border after all.
Well, let's talk about something. Do you know who is John Mearsheimer? He's in Russia, people like him are being called useful idiots. So he's a professor of history who is teaching the real politics. What means real politics? It means there is a huge, very powerful Russia. And there are some little states here and there, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, or Uzbekistan, but all kind of garbage there. And they cannot have their own policy, politics, army, economy, just nothing. They have to be always smile, be polite, ask Russia, what would you like me to do today? Would you like me to jump 5 times? Oh, how high? Oh, nice. I'm going to do it for you between 3 and 4. Oh, you want 4 and 5? Okay, I'll do it between 4 and 5. That's what Finland did all the years after Second World War until 3 months ago when it joined NATO. Finland was independent and it didn't commit to any blocks whatsoever. And of course, after Putin invaded Ukraine and started the huge war, the first war since 1945 in Europe, Finland ran into NATO. Now, speaking about what I asked you before, what's a mechanism of bringing new members to NATO? It's very simple. A country, for example, at that time I was actually in Poland when Poland joined NATO. Well, it's a process. It's not one day situation. So Poland applied that they want to be a member of NATO. They applied, I think, in 1994. So there was a process what they had to do in order to be accepted. They went through the process and they became a member of NATO in 1997.
That's right.
Later, okay, so there is a process. Ukraine, based on what I understand, they could never be accepted to NATO. If Russia wouldn't attack them, they would never be accepted to NATO until sometime 2030, if not longer, because there are just too many things that Ukraine had to comply before they would be accepted to NATO and also European Union, by the way. So same thing happened not only to Poland, but Baltic republics, Czech Republic, and all those new members. So all this new membership happened between 1997, 1999. The latest ones were 2004, I think, Baltic states. So it wasn't that NATO was encouraging these new countries. Come on, join NATO. We will fight Russia together and we will kill all of them. No, it's not the case. The countries were applying to be accepted. They had to go through the process.
Right. And I'm not going to wait until Ukraine gets an approval on its application to join NATO, because over the last, I would say, 30 years, one by one, Western European countries have joined NATO, and it is a threat to Russia's national security.
Which Western European countries joined NATO in the last 30 years, in your opinion?
I'm sorry?
You mentioned that the Western European countries won.
Nearly all of them. I don't have a list on me right now. I can pull up the information. But if you look at it, everybody
there was no Western European country except Finland 3 months ago. For 30 years, there was no Western European countries joining NATO.
Okay,
it was Eastern European countries.
Okay, I'm sorry. My apologies.
Well,
Eastern European countries on the west coast of on the west of Russia's border. If you look at the map, they're all affiliated with. They're all members of NATO except for one, and that is Ukraine. And that's why Russia invaded Ukraine, because of the threat to their national security of being surrounded on their borders by countries that are pro-democracy and hostile to Russia. And I think on the east coast of the United States, if this happened, we would do the exact same thing.
Adam, along those same lines.
Maybe we would, but we're going to have to wrap up.
Well, we're going to wrap up because we
actually on Thursday.
I want to wrap up. I want to keep talking because you know what? This is a good discussion. I'm just. Russia would be an intelligent voter.
We started actually a few minutes
late.
If
we're going to continue talking, I'm going to have to pour some vodka, and so is Sasha.
No, we got about 7 minutes because we did start a little bit late. We do have roughly about 7 minutes. I was going to ask Adam.
Let's talk on Thursday. And
we'll continue discussion on Thursday.
About all this bullshit, what we spent 45 minutes today. We'll start with that because this is only meaningful discussion.
Well, there are other discussions as well when it comes to politics. There are other discussions when it comes to politics in America.
I think that there's something to be said when somebody feels threatened. You know, what Adam was talking about too is, you know, if the United States, if we felt like too many people were coming in on us, you know, what actions would we take? Sometimes I wonder, are organizations like NATO valuable anymore, or do
no, they're not valuable. But
guys, look at what we did with Cuba.
No,
we
not
did
just
the
Cuba,
same
but
thing with Cuba.
Hold on a second, not just Cuba, because one of the things I was going to bring in is that to your point, Kim, there are some people that are concerned about some of the folks that are coming in, even from some of the communist countries, and whether they are coming in and then just gathering the knowledge and then going back to their country that they're from, whether that's Cuba, whether that's China, or a number of other ones that exist as well. So, like I said, you mentioned Duke earlier, Adam. I literally live right around the corner from Duke, and I can tell you there are a number of Chinese students that come in, get the education, and then they go back to China. Now, whether they're communists or not, I don't know.
Duke, I want to go to NC State.
Adam, let me tell you, we start on
We'll
Thursday.
go visit.
But one thing I want to say today, all the problem today with Russia, Ukraine, and many other topics in that direction, coming from the flawed way of American universities teaching people about that region. So what they're doing is, it had some merits before Soviet Union existed. So, okay, here's a huge landmass. It's a Soviet Union. It's very powerful. We have to know this and this and that, and that's the end of story. And they were talking and learning Russian language and Russian history or so on, like other countries like Ukraine and others, they wouldn't even exist. Poland had rights because it was an independent state for many years now, but not Ukraine. Well, there's no Ukraine, it's nothing. But the reality, if you will go back into history, you will see that Russia, after the Mongol and Tatar invasion, it's for 250 years, it lost its meaning as a country. It was completely ruled by the Asians. And though today's many laws are in Russia, deriving from the East, from Asia, not from the Europe. Wherever Ukraine was always part of Lithuanian and Polish unity, and they always were European country. They had Renaissance, they had culture. Russia don't. Because if you tell me about Dostoevsky, Tchaikovsky, and all that stuff, remember all their greatest works they composed while being outside of Russia, in Europe.
No, but Sasha, along those same lines, because we were just talking about Duke University, that's actually what your point is actually what they called their studies, because the study at Duke is called the Center for Slavic, Eurasian, and Eastern European Studies. So they actually take your standpoint that it is a Eurasian connection and everything, because that's literally what their study is called, is Slavic and
Well,
Eurasian
look, I
studies.
mean, the bottom line is this: if I was Vladimir Putin, and I had, I'm sorry, I said Western Europe, but if I had Eastern European countries one by one becoming a part of NATO, and then Ukraine being suggested to ultimately be a part of NATO, I'd have a problem with that too. I mean, look at how we treated Cuba. Okay, imagine if we had 5 Cubas surrounding the East Coast. We'd do the same thing. And I've never been afraid of Russia. I've always thought Russia could be an ally. And I think Mr. Putin is a strategic leader. I don't see him as a threat. And I do believe that a partnership with Russia and the United States is important because we don't want Russia and China.
Adam, tell that to people in Bucha who lost
In where?
their lives. Bucha, it's a little village near Kiev where there are huge atrocities, as I said before. I'm not going to do it second time.
Well, I agree with you totally. But look at what we did in Vietnam. We raped women. We killed children. I understand it's horrific, but that is not going to necessarily influence my overall view of what could be a strategic partnership with Russia, because otherwise Russia is going to be much closer to China, and that alignment is what scares me most.
Very quick question. If Russia wouldn't have nuclear weapons, would you still talk about friendship with Russia and how lovely they are and Putin a great leader and all that stuff? Seriously.
If they didn't have nuclear
If
weapons,
they didn't have nuclear.
no, I would not.
No. Okay, that's my point. Okay.
No.
Adam and Sasha, we get ready to wrap up just really quickly. The only other thing I was going to get ready to ask Adam really quickly and everything is his thoughts, and that you can do them shortly, and we'll get to it on Thursday's show as well. But we are seeing some people that are jumping into some interesting races that have like a background of being part of corporate America and all along those lines. So I did see that Daniel Lurie, a longtime nonprofit executive and a heir to Levi Strauss and Company Fortune, is announced that he is going to be challenging the mayor over there in San Francisco. And I know that even Nick has talked about how bad San Francisco is with its homeless encampments, drug overdoses, and a downtown that has been hollowed out of the pandemic-induced tech exodus. So as one that is a political student, I just wondered if you had any thoughts about this hair and nonprofit person that said, hey, I'm going to try to jump in this race because I can do better than the current young lady that is in the seat of office.
Okay,
Well,
I said everything what I wanted to say. Good luck, everybody.
I would
Bye-bye.
love to continue this on Thursday. It's a good
On
discussion.
Thursday. Yeah, if nobody will break our conversation and get into.
We'll
So,
see you on Thursday.
We'll see you on Thursday. I don't know if
I'd
Adam,
like to have a time with you, but without interruptions. Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
Sasha. So the question you were asking me, I'm
like,
always skeptical of these people entering into the political sphere. I really am. I mean, what are his ideas? What is he running on? So he's the heir to, would you say, Levi Strauss? Oh, so
Right,
he's
Strauss.
an elitist, wealthy beyond belief, and probably has no ideas, but probably just out of a narcissistic urge wants to do something new in his life because he's bored, so wants to run for office. I think he'll flop.
Apparently, he's also a nonprofit leader, and we know that sometimes we are fans of nonprofits. Sometimes we're not
It's
always.
easy to be a nonprofit leader when you're worth $1 billion.
That's true.
I
But he-
also want to bring note of, I don't know if Nick made a comment on this, but the homeless problem in San Francisco is not as bad as they make it out to be. I don't know why they always promote that San Francisco is so full of them. I've been there many times, even took my sister who was like, oh my God, no. And she gets there and she's like, because that's what we do. We go look for homeless people and try to help them whenever we travel together. We take some time out to help the cultural area. And she was like, we spent hours looking for homeless and we were not in the most wealthy sections. And she goes, people like to just, spread propaganda and make stuff up about this, don't they? And I go, yes, they do.
No, it's the same thing with Donald Trump. People just focus on one little thing and they forget that Donald Trump has done so many good things. I totally agree. I think
But it's not even that. I mean, I go to Asheville and
Adam, he did go try to buy a
hundreds
gun.
of
He did try to buy a gun, and that's not cool. You've been under indictment. You're trying to buy a Glock. I don't know why Donald Trump needs a Glock.
I don't believe
did
that
Donald Trump try to buy a gun?
He tried to buy a Glock in South Carolina.
And Trump needs to understand that he needs good lawyers, and I'm here.
He has
I'm waiting for the
horrible
feedback.
attorneys.
Yeah, he does have horrible attorneys.
One of his tax issues, I know exactly what the problem is. And I've tried to tell them because it was something that the IRS was doing. The IRS was actually pulling a little stunt or scam on people, and they were getting away with it. Even my CPA kind of saw what was going on, tried to reach out to him, but his attorneys, I think they just like to charge him.
They're just trying to make money off of him.
He's one of those guys that he's just going to keep writing checks to them, and they're going to keep telling him what he wants to hear. But I will say this: there were hundreds and hundreds of homeless that I ran into in Asheville. Hundreds. You couldn't walk a quarter of a step without seeing a homeless person. But you go to San Francisco and you can walk. Nick never even saw a homeless person.
Well, like I said, I just saw.
Nick needs to
believe it.
stop going to the country club and start going to the people.
Well, we do. My sister and I do. We go all the time whenever we travel. We might do a lot of fun things for us, but we always say to ourselves, we're going to go out and help.
Kim,
You need to be traveling with me, not your sister.
Kim and Adam,
This is
you can
really
find.
different. I mean,
We'll
Kim and Adam,
campaign with you, okay?
Kim and Adam, you can
travel with
find
you on the
plenty of them
campaign.
here in. You can find plenty of them here in Durham. I just got on the bus.
But we have to go out and help the homeless at least.
I will help the homeless, and I want Mark Lee to be my campaign manager.
Oh, I'll definitely be your campaign manager.
But what am I?
You? Listen, we'll discuss that a little bit later. But
I got you,
you'll
Adam.
be
That's
an integral, intimate part of the campaign.
Can I have some of that money that you were promising earlier?
Yes, and Nick is going to be forced to relinquish his country club membership because I want someone who's for the people. Too much time with the martinis and the golf course.
Well, Nick doesn't drink alcohol, but he
Yeah, he is
doesn't
a
know
Mormon.
how to eat on styrofoam. So
I love Nick. He's a great
No,
guy.
he's
I do
great.
too. I taught him how to order out of a food truck. So
Oh, you taught him how to order out of a food truck? That ought to be
I
really
did.
interesting.
when we
that's-
first met, he never dined like that before. So
But Adam, just to let you know, I just got accepted because I do get by around quite a bit by mass transit, and I just literally was on the bus, and there was literally 6 homeless people on there because one of them had a one of our street festival signs that they had turned into one of their placards to let folks know that they were homeless.
Homelessness is not acceptable in the United States. We're going to have to house the homeless people and provide them with basics.
there
I
are
totally
better
get that.
ways to do it than what we're doing right now. I don't like it when they divide a husband and wife up.
Right.
There are some better ways. We have so many unused facilities.
I've said that a couple of times. I agree.
Like that.
Unused buildings,
Well, hold on a
empty
second.
apartments.
You would be surprised when you divide a husband and wife how much happier they become. I'm just saying.
How would you know?
You may have a
Well,
point
that's-
there. But just really quickly, the thing that Laurie said, I think you can get with this, Adam. His exact quote was, "We are in a crisis and we are hurting right now." This is what he said when he made his announcement on earlier today. We need people to work together, and the only way you can take an entrenched system with a leader that has allowed these problems to fester is with new leadership. It's got to be leadership from the outside. So it sounds like he's running from the Donald Trump playbook and the Obama playbook.
Yeah, he's just not as charismatic, and I suspect he's not going to appeal to the average person the way Trump did. But we'll see. I could be wrong. I can't wait, for my inauguration in 2028. It's going to be a special day, and I'm going to ask
I'll
you
be
guys.
there.
I
hope
believe
so.
that might
I
actually be
surely
playing the whole
do.
thing. 'Cause
Nick will be there.
How much I hope you're. Yes, of course. And look, at the end of the day, when I die, I'd like to look back on my life and say I did something to help the lives of people in some small way. And if we can do that, then that's what leadership is all about.
Because you do know that in 2028, Kim and Nick will be known as the Ted Turners of live streaming.
Really?
Yes.
Excellent. Well,
You
look, it's
How
going
about
to
the
be.
Nick and Kim of?
I'm going to spend my first night in the White House in the Lincoln bedroom.
I believe that.
I can't wait.
We're
in the
looking forward to it as
Lincoln
well. So
bedroom?
right now, we get on out of here. This has been a fun conversation.
I knew Kim.
Despite the fact that
yes.
I don't like Lincoln.
well, we have a whole conversation about that. We're gonna have a new poll coming out on Thursday. Like I said, Adam, you did not win this one. Taylor won. So far, we've had Oscar the Grouch win and Taylor Swift win in our polls. And I don't know. I think Miss Piggy's going to be the cultural candidate for this time. So Miss Piggy will be our cultural candidate this time around.
All
Well,
right,
everyone,
let's try to
have a
manipulate
great
the vote.
day. We'll see you Thursday at 5 p.m.
Take
Yeah,
care.
Bye.
Go.
Sorry.